Good morning, good morning, good morning. How are we doing today? It is definitely a Monday for sure. So, as you come in, let us know where you're coming in from, and we will get this showboat rolling very, very quickly. Good morning, Sam.
Morning.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing okay. How you doing? I'm trying to get so my family doesn't have to worry about being in. I don't know how to zoom this thing in.
Oh, you're fine. You can't see faces.
Okay. Can you not? You can't see anybody's face?
No,
Okay.
I see white blobs.
What about my nephew? Sweetie, go
Oh,
put some
I
pants.
can see somebody sitting at the table, and then your nephew walking past.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to not have them
So
in.
rotate the computer just the other direction a little bit more. There we go.
There. Okay. Okay.
Now we can just see your stove. But
Mhm.
yeah. Anyways,
Okay.
good morning.
Morning.
How are you doing today?
I'm okay. I'm just tired. It was a long weekend. It was a pretty good weekend, but it was a long weekend.
So I just got off the phone with somebody,
Uh-huh.
and him and I are going to have another conversation here in the next day or so in
Mm-hmm.
regards to actually putting all the money together to build 3 more servers.
Really? That's great.
So
Three more.
3
So
more.
with three more servers, you the stuff that we talked about is
The
completely.
redundancy is taken care of.
Uh-huh.
So once the redundancy is taken care of, you no longer have to worry about
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to worry about having the issues with
Morning,
servers
Mom.
going down
Mm-hmm.
and all of that. Good morning, Winks. Good morning, LA Duncan. Hopefully your daughter's doing better. If you need to, definitely reach out and chat. Kind of have a little bit of a history with that myself, so feel free and reach out anytime if you need a chat. Good morning, Patriot Lady. If I remember right, it's Florida. I'm almost certain it is, but yeah. Anyways, good morning. Good morning, Anna. I need to talk to you later and go over a few things. And yeah,
Morning, everybody.
on
Lori, this
break at work. Okay. So basically, guys, the biggest thing we're looking at a few different things. If you start getting emails from the website, we're going to test it a few times, double check and make sure everything was, and then we're going to start rolling that out, an email marketing campaign, and that you'll see a letter that comes and you can actually email that to your friends, your family. That's basically the gist of it. So, but yeah, well,
yeah, Ellie Duncan. I feel
yeah,
you.
I still do know a little bit about it, but no, I understand. We're here for you if you need it. Ask Sam. I spent over an hour on the phone with her the other night,
I did.
and I she was able to keep from having a complete breakdown.
I was able to. Yeah, I wasn't.
I
wasn't on the verge of a breakdown, but it definitely helped give me a little perspective about a couple things that are going on.
Yeah. No, it's the thing is, guys, is it's always nice to have an outside perspective on everything in our life, because sometimes we just, daydream. Sometimes we have a good morning, Samovsky. In life, when it's being viewed from an outside perspective, it's a whole lot easier to understand and accept different things, because I know for myself, I even have to do it at least once or twice a month. I do talk to people who are a little bit more knowledgeable about mental health and anxieties and all that stuff. So anytime there's depression, stuff like that, major stressors in our life, it's always good to have somebody who knows a little bit, but not enough to have a bias of sorts. And Sam, she's been the recipient of a couple of my talks. So is Jason. So I mean, pretty much anybody who has been on this program, we've talked a lot, and we've gotten to know each other very, very well. But I'm blunt in my analysis, and I don't really hold back the punches, do I? Sometimes It stings a little bit.
A little bit. The good way.
But I have to look at it from the outside view. The 30,000 view that nobody seems to be able to do to themselves. And it's a good thing.
It is. And I mean, that's part of the whole, the fact that we have we're a societal creature. We are not lone creatures. We develop in a society. We're meant to live in groups and congregations, and that's part of it. The fact that we live in groups and congregations means that we don't have to necessarily maintain that outer perspective. We can rely on each other for it, which allows us to further develop other skills, because we don't have to devote time and energy and mental space to that. So it is a beautiful thing. And we're not meant to have perfect perspective of our own sphere. We're meant to rely on others.
But okay, what was the outcome of the audit out west? We won't know until after the 16th of May. So as soon as we know what that audit outcome, as soon as we have the report, we will let you guys know. So because the eyes of the world are looking at that. It's not going to be something that is going to be just underwhelming. I think it's going to be an overwhelming shock to a lot of people. I'm tracking and talking to people who are we're trying to get everything situated to where when we do start breaking it down, we actually bring in other experts, because quite honestly, when you're talking about an integrity audit, you have to be able to break down the scope into different people.
The
And
more, sorry.
go ahead.
There's a question up here from the More Perfect Union, asking if we allow, I guess, Discord and discussion. We encourage that. We encourage.
I am all for bringing in more people, more guests, especially if they're willing to discuss and have conversations. If you want to do that, you can reach out to me. I'll throw up the email address, and I'm more than willing to have more people on the show. I quite honestly, it's having more members or people who show up as contributors. The bigger the impact the show has, and that's the biggest thing.
Mm-hmm. So yes, I mean, if you want to be a guest on the show and to have a discussion on the show, absolutely get in touch, because we would love to hear differing opinions.
Yep, and the email is down below for you guys. But yeah, my curiosity is why more people filing lawsuits to challenge the way the election laws were changed outside of legislature authority. Here is my take on it. I don't know if it's 100% the same take as everybody else will have, but my take is they seen how fast and easily the judges in the Supreme Court threw out the old cases and said that there wasn't enough standing. So if they see that there's not enough standing in those cases, why are they going to challenge that? It's just going to cause chaos. We don't have a Discord channel, so I don't. And that's another thing. Lawsuits get expensive. More Perfect Union, send me an email at admin@patriotnewsnetwork.us, and we'll definitely get you on. That's how Sam got on. That's how Jason got on. That's how we've built this. We just once I have an email, then I can send you an invite and up you come. So
we add people who want to come on.
Do I think anything will come of the audit? I believe there will be something that comes out of it. Will it be earth-shattering right away? I think it's going to, once that domino falls, then others will start falling after the fact. I'm waiting for your email to come through. But yeah, Daydream. So Yeah, we're waiting to see. I think Pennsylvania is going to fall, and I think you're going to see others start to pop off too. And guys, if you are telling people to join the Patriot News Network.us PNN social page, that is not the one that we're using. We're going to be shutting that down because, quite honestly, with Fullstream, we built a whole different platform, and it's on a whole different platform, different servers, different everything. So
Level. Oh, I saw that Kentucky Derby winner thing. Okay, so here's my BS like 2-minute assessment of the situation, right? So you have a horse who is on.
I have to take it.
Yep. You have a horse who is receiving betamethasone treatments. Betamethasone is a steroid. It's used for inflammation. It's a steroid that's used for inflammation, not the kind that pumps up the athletic performance of an animal. It's the kind that reduces inflammation in an animal. The idea being that if the animal is requiring this much of the steroid, the animal is being worked too hard and abused. That's the regulation behind the betamethasone, by the way. This animal has high amounts of this steroid in his bloodstream, according to the post-race tests. And it seems that this isn't the first time that accusation has been made against the trainer. Okay. One could also technically argue that the trainer is taking really good care of his animal by making sure that any cause of inflammation is dealt with. But this is the same animal that the jockey was being attributed to the quote about if he didn't want to go to the White House because if he'd wanted to look at a horse's ass, he would have come in second. And the jockey basically said he would never have said that, and I believe that. It was probably just a joke that somebody started that took off, but the point is that it was a funny point and a funny dart at the incumbent administration, and that doesn't go over well in the liberal world at all. So I am guessing that this could be just a further attempt to disqualify or remove from any elevated standing in society any association with the animal that was also associated with belittling Joe Biden. And I could be wrong, but that's my rabbit hole, and I'm staying down it.
Okay, I'm back.
Yeah, I heard he's been caught in violations a number of times this year. Don't get me wrong. I'm not unaware of that. I'm just saying. Could be, could not be. But it's a little suspicious that it happens right after his animal is incorrectly associated with a jab at Joe Biden.
And the more perfect union, I did send you an email too. So go ahead and look for that. Okay.
Well, here's the thing. There's a comment up here that says one of two things will happen from the audit. Number one, and this is from Tiger84X. Number one, it'll show voter fraud, or number two, it won't. If it shows voter fraud, Biden is screwed. No, that's the thing. It'll either show the voter fraud or it won't show the voter fraud. But even if it shows the voter fraud, that doesn't mean that Biden is screwed. You still have to get a court that's willing to remove him. Is that correct?
No.
To take action on it?
If it's just one state, it's not that big of a deal.
Mm-hmm.
If it's multiple states, then it's a different story. But I think we got another guest. States. Okay, more perfect union, you are on.
Yes.
States. Okay, more perfect union, you are on.
Yes.
States.
Oh, I think more perfect union has to turn.
Yeah. No, that's cool. I've had one stream going. And,
Okay.
Apparently, I need to fix a camera. Bear with me as I do this. But, thanks, first of all, for letting me on the show. You got a couple people in your audience that know me. I'm in the process of getting my Twitch stream up and running, and also I participate in other people's panels and stuff like that. So I'm a pretty staunch conservative, I call myself, because I'm older and I was in the Navy, a boomer constructionista. So essentially it's a play on everybody else's craziness, right? So I'll get into it. But essentially what I like to do is I like to argue the point that everything, or a lot of things that liberals or progressives want to do, it feels good, it sounds good, it's a good bribe to get votes for power, but most of the time the constitutional underpinnings for those laws or changes are questionable. And I think part of our problem is, as a society, is that we have grown too accustomed to not fighting for our rights.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Well, I think you and I are on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I'm disagreeing with what you guys are saying, but I wanted to throw in a few things, and I'm not going to try to dominate your show, but just with respect to the 2020 election, a lot of people are focused on what went wrong, quote unquote, in the battleground states. It wasn't the battleground states by themselves. 20 states changed their election laws outside of the purview of what the Constitution, what my reading of the Constitution says, which is that election law, the method and manner of selection of electors for president, is dictated by the state legislature.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And 20 states, including Texas, by the way, made changes to their election law by either governors, secretaries of state, state boards of election, or state courts. And those things all violate the literal letter of the law in the Constitution. And my big question, and progressives say all the cases were dismissed, blah, 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 blah.
That's not true.
I come back and I say, well, cases were dismissed for either standing, as you rightly pointed out, the Supreme Court case for Texas and the number of other states. But most of the cases were rejected under the legal doctrine of latches, which is basically Katie barred the door. You filed too late. You can't wait until election day is over to make a challenge that the laws or the rules for the election that govern the elections administration were unfounded or wrong or violated any kind of law. Now, the interesting thing about that is that the doctrine of latches comes from Old English common law. And as it applies in the United States, courts have a fair amount of leeway in making a determination whether or not latches should apply. So an interesting thing you pointed out about standing with the Supreme Court, right? Standing is a number of things. Standing is you are the right person to bring the case. There's also the concept of ripeness, meaning the case is ready. Like something has to have happened to harm the plaintiff, in this case, the Trump campaign. before they can actually file claim, right? You can't preemptively file a court case if you haven't been harmed. So the conundrum here for the Trump campaign is that they couldn't technically file suit about the election itself before election day because they wouldn't have been harmed, and they couldn't wait until after because of latches, because it would have been too late. It would have been prejudicial to the Biden campaign. But there was nothing that prevented the Trump campaign from filing cases about the specific rules themselves before the election, and they simply just didn't do that. And that's a problem, right? So if people want to take what I'm saying at face value and say, yes, we agree with you, that's fine. Here's the problem. All of those things are still unconstitutional based on my reading. Yet we don't have anybody pressing back to say, where's the challenge in Wisconsin, where I live? Where's the challenge that says Dane County, with their Democracy in the Park, created 2 methods and mechanisms by which they could do early registration? And the state law says you can only have one. You can have the place, which is the clerk's office, or you can have an alternate location, but you can't have both. So before they were in the clerk's office, they did Democracy in the Park, and then they went back to the clerk's office. Clear violation of law. Okay. So where are the people? And hopefully, I don't know how many people are, I mean, there's 45 people in your stream right now, but I don't know how many people need to go out and challenge their local and state election boards and their legislatures to reassert that control. If people understand, right, people think that they vote for president. We vote for electors for president. And those electors are based on the representation that the states have. So in reality, the founders had intended that the states were the ones that were voting for the president. So unless the legislatures can be cajoled into going back and taking back their election law, their rights under the Constitution, the problems that we saw in 2020 will perpetuate into 2022 and 2024 and beyond. And I thank you very much for letting me come on and make that. I mean, I can type, right? But with things that scroll, sometimes messaging can become disjointed, right?
And see, you're a lot clearer with the laws. Quite honestly, I'll give you that. I was a Navy guy myself, but I was not into. I don't know all the facets of the law. But there were 2 cases in which they were challenged preemptively in regards to the rules being changed, and both of those were heard, and both of them were accepted, and they were challenged successfully. And one was in Pennsylvania, and the other one was in Michigan. I would have to get the case numbers, but I do remember those 2, but they were not dismissed because of lack of standing.
Yeah, some of the elements were people were getting some of the cases, they were able to bring them forward, right? And I'm not arguing, nor do I think it's possible that anybody will successfully be able to argue that Joe Biden should be unseated because of the way the election ran. I think you have to sort of chalk that up. It is what it is. And sometimes everybody's got to eat a turd sandwich, right? That's fine. But I don't want to eat turd sandwiches every year or every election, right? So we have to go back and we have to assert through our elected representatives in our state legislatures that the laws have to be fixed, or that at minimum legal challenges to the way those laws that had existed before have to be challenged as unconstitutional so that they can be removed by the book. Now, if the state legislature wants to do what they did in Dane County and they want to approve that for Wisconsin, for example, let them, right? That's the law. But if they don't, then if we can't get it done through the courts, We have to get it done through the legislature. And that literally is going to take people peacefully protesting and making their voices heard in a patriotic manner. I say that explicitly because that was essentially paraphrasing what the president had said, yet the media and everybody else chose to look at that in the worst possible way, while calling all of the rioting last year mostly peaceful protests. You know, half the cases in Portland have been dismissed. Most of them are probably going to get dismissed. Yet everybody that was at the Capitol that they can find and tie a name to is going to be buried underneath a prison somewhere.
Yeah, there's so
if we don't fight the liturgical battle and win that battle, then we will not have freedom to oppose what the government does by policy. And that's a dangerous thing.
So pretty much from the start of my podcast, I don't know how long you've been watching.
Not terribly long. I'm relatively new to Twitch. I've been doing it for about 3 months and mostly just trying to get out there and have discussion with people. So I'm in the process of building my stream up. It's not quite ready for prime time yet. I'm trying to do a lot of automation, a lot of creative stuff around the side. So.
Oh yeah. I've been doing this for about 3 months as well.
Yeah,
Before I was not a live streamer.
Every network out there, and ideally, right? If you want to have the best kinds of conversation, we need that, as Brandeis said, we need to have those disinfectant of sunshine. We need to bring everybody's ideas together and let people defend their stuff and let the listeners make the determination where the truth is, right? Because it's not on the far right. It's not on the far left. But to me, I don't care what the policies are, so long as they comport with the Constitution. Now, I might have personal preferences for them, but if they're grounded in constitutional law, I don't have anything negative to say about them, short of, well, I don't like that, so let's change the Constitution. And yes, it's a tough lift, but Democrats don't want to do that. They just simply do what they do, and it takes years for that to work its way through the court. And you can make the argument that Republicans or conservatives do the same thing after a fashion. They both have different constituencies, right? And they both do things that violate the intent or the letter of the law as the Constitution provides. And the reason why they get away with it is because citizens don't pay enough attention. Our education system does not seek to edify children with critical thinking and analysis skills. So therefore, teachers can simply walk in to a class and say, this is what it is. And the kids aren't, matter of fact, if they question what teachers say, they get in trouble. So it's all about driving compliance and conversion, right? It's less education and more indoctrination. And part of the other piece, right, while you're fighting this fight about trying to get election laws changed and work with the adults, we need to have a serious come to Jesus moment, so to speak, with the education system and stop promoting concepts that teach kids indoctrination. When teachers unions and government officials can come back and tell you that math is systemically racist, you know you have problems.
Yeah. And I mean, like I've pretty much from the beginning, having most people would consider this a conservative podcast or a conservative talk show, because I think we could safely say that 90% of the people that land here are on the conservative side of the political spectrum. But again, it's going back to laying the groundwork for a grassroots coming to Jesus, as you will. And that's kind of where we've started. is how do we build that? How do we, and laying out a grassroots playbook to actually do that. Because let's face it, in the education system, they're eliminating the teaching of cursive. Why is that? Well, they don't want kids to be able to read the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution.
No, I totally agree. There's some, so I don't know who Ripe for Parody is in your chat, but paraphrasing, the president said, except that dozens of times he said fight and that your country is being stolen from you. Our country is being stolen from us.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean, if secretaries of state and governors and state courts can violate the federal constitution in order to favor a set of election policies that benefit a single party, that is theft. It's not fraud. I mean, I get it. I get the fact that people want to latch onto the concept and say that the president is saying that the election is being stolen by fraud, that there is election fraud. There was some election fraud. It wasn't enough to overturn or to alter significantly the course of the election. 4,000 or 8,000 dead people voted, right? 40,000, 8 or 10,000 people in Arizona didn't even live in Arizona, but yet they still voted. When we have drop boxes that are unguarded, and we have unguarded drop boxes that ballot harvesters can go out and collect ballots and throw them in, you have no idea. You have no idea. Somebody moves, they get sent a ballot, not an application for a ballot. There's no validation. When Georgia reduced or practically eliminated the signature match to say that instead of having a document in the clerk's office that the signature had to match, which would have meant knowledge beforehand, they simply said that we will match the signature on the inner and the outer envelope. Any swinging out there could have done that, right? I could have said that my name is Tom Smith, and just if I sign it the same way on the inner and outer ballot, if that becomes the signature verification, what's the verification? So Ripe with Parody is completely missing the point. The election laws were changed. The manner of the way that they were changed was unconstitutional according to Article 1. And that made those, and that fact alone for 20 states, not 6, not the battleground states. This affected Republican and Democratic won states alike. All of those electors were questioned or should be questioned in a constitutional framework as provided by the Constitution. Now, people will say, well, you're going to disenfranchise millions and millions of voters. No. The state disenfranchised its own citizens. It's not Donald Trump doing it. It literally was leftward and rightward, Republican and Democrat, progressives and conservatives who disenfranchised, or should have under the law, disenfranchised their own citizens. And it's those entities that should be held accountable by their citizens. So I don't mind if people want to question what I'm saying, but don't question in a disingenuous way.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
That was a very well thought out.
You know what? I think let's take some time. So
Yeah.
if okay, and it looks like we have another panelist.
Woo, yay.
So, like, if I thought my country was being stolen from me, how would peacefully protesting solve that issue? You know, it's not that peaceful protest is going to solve it. The peaceful being upset about it, yeah, I can understand it. But going out and blowing up our country isn't going to solve the issue either.
Neither is burning down.
Figure out how to constitutionally take care of it and make it so it works the way it's supposed to.
Yeah, I have a short answer for right for parity. Let's ask Martin Luther King what peaceful protest did.
Right.
It took a hot minute. It took a hot minute to get it done, but the civil rights movement was all born out of his activity, and he was explicitly nonviolent. So you have to bring visibility to the problem. So peaceful protest is that vector, okay? But you also have to get people motivated to create the change that needs to be done. So if people aren't aware of it, there's no chance of changing it.
And that's where the education comes. Yeah.
And peaceful protest is our constitutionally protected legal avenue of drawing attention to it. You are supposed to protest peacefully to things like this. That's step one. And that's the point. Step one needs to happen. It's not happening. Step one needs to happen first. That's your peaceful protest. It is not a fiery, but mostly peaceful protest. That is not.
As CNN would call it.
Right.
And I think
Peaceful
that reporting was done in Kenosha,
burning
Wisconsin.
behind them, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to step on you, Shane. I said as the fire rages behind the CNN reporter, he said it's mostly peaceful.
Yeah,
Right.
that was in
it's
Kenosha,
like-
wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was.
It
Like
was
the
Kenosha.
world is burning down. I think somewhere back there was a volcano erupting, and there's like, but it's peaceful. It's just crazy.
Yeah, so right for parity to me just wants to try to score leftist points, and they're not, in my opinion, they're not being remotely genuine. Right? I mean, he said, well, so I make a comment about what's the value of peaceful protest, right? Answering their question, sorry, I don't know who they are. Make a comment about Martin Luther King and his peaceful protest and what it did. And he goes, he was a democratic socialist. Like, that's going to piss me off.
Oh, that'll piss me off. DSA. Hey guys, how are you? Pete here. How are you? Thanks for having me on the call.
Hey, glad to have you.
You look like Borat, man. I'm going to tell you.
Excuse me?
You look a little like Borat right there.
Because of the mustache?
Yes, that's exactly right. I was like,
Well, mustache is
not
sort of an old
not
fashion.
like-
It's
very
sort of
much.
the way that people used to wear their facial hair a lot traditionally in this country, and a lot of patriots. You look at people Civil War era and stuff, definitely had mustaches, and nowadays not so much. Nowadays you wear a mustache and you come on something like this, and people say, "Oh, you look like Borat," and it's like a joke or something like that. But back in the day,
I mean no disrespect whatsoever.
Absolutely. I appreciate what you guys. I just heard DSA, sorry, and my blood started boiling when I heard Democratic Socialists of America. I like to call them. Can I swear on this?
Try to keep it as clean as possible. I actually do have an FCC license, so I have to be careful.
Yes,
But
of course. And then and I appreciate what you guys are doing. By the way, I'm in. I live in Washington D.C. Do you guys live in Washington D.C.?
no.
Well, how come?
Well, it's not big enough to hold America, and the politics would just drive me nuts.
But it's the nation's capital.
Yeah.
So it's where the decisions get made in the country. So I personally moved there. I made the decision. I think it's probably a good idea to move there because that's the nation's capital. And so as sort of, as a patriot, it's probably best to live there.
Go for it, but it won't hold all of us.
That's true. That's a good point. So what are you guys doing to further the America First agenda? I see you're doing your live stream. You've got that going on. What do you do day to day to do you buy local? Do you buy, as far as the clothing that you're wearing, is that manufactured in America?
We have no idea.
Oh, you have no idea. And so
honestly,
that's interesting to me because it's like there's very simple things we can do to support people domestically, and you guys aren't doing that.
The coat I wear, the shirt,
Permanent.
everything I have is American, and like all the design work that I have for my companies and everything.
Yeah.
here, United States based.
All the clothing you're wearing is American made. You're sure of that? Every piece of clothing you're wearing is American made. You're sure of that? Let's see. I would love to see the tag on it to get verification on that.
They're not having a tag because my wife made it.
Oh, your wife made it. Oh, okay. Well, hey, that's cool. And your wife's American?
Yeah. We live in South Dakota.
South Dakota. Okay. Well, hey, that's great. What about the more perfect union? This guy, he's not even willing to put himself on screen. I bet you he's probably wearing some sort of.
Oh, time out, Pete.
Yeah.
So there's a way to get your point across. Your point.
Yeah, I'm doing it right now. I'm doing it. That's this is. You may have your way. I'm getting my point across right now. Your way of getting your point across is to hide behind your keyboard and not even show yourself on screen because you're probably wearing some sort of communist shirt. That's the truth.
Okay, so
Really?
Patriot, you have a message for us. I'm
Yes.
sure you do.
Yes.
Let's tell us your message.
My
Tell us your
message.
message
My
right now.
message is buy local. And when I say local, I don't mean local, I mean American, and only buy things that are American. And only, this is a big one. If you don't live in America, how are you going to call yourself a patriot? If you don't live in the United States of Washington, D.C. as well, the capital, how are you going to call yourself a patriot? I want people out there fighting. You ever consider going to a school and yelling?
Is that a rhetorical question?
Did you ever consider going to a school and yelling about freedom?
I think everyone has considered that. I mean,
Yeah.
there is frustration.
Oh, hold on. I have a. You said.
Oh, the faceless guy wants to talk. Hang on. The faceless guy won't even show his face, wants to talk. Everybody stop now.
Okay.
So you can't be a patriot unless you live in the nation's capital. What about the founders?
What about the founders?
How many of them lived in Washington,
in the
D.C.?
nation's capital?
You're going to go back historically to a time when Washington,
I'm just
D.C.
I'm illustrating the idiocy of your point.
Listen, the lunacy of my point. Okay, can you not find a home? I know a real estate agent who lives in Washington that can help you to find a home at a reasonable price. There's real estate there. If you don't want to be a patriot, don't be a patriot. That's it. It's
Okay,
like you get to make a decision.
Patriot.
I did not bring you on the program to attack other people. Okay. First of all, I'm not going to sit here and have attacks being made because you had a message. I brought you on to talk about it, and I understand some people.
He might be Russian. He might be Russian. That's why he's not showing himself. He might be Russian, and behind him is Russian stuff, and that's why he doesn't want to show his cam.
Rabbit hole.
Show your cam. Show your cam if you're not in Russia. Show your cam if you're not in Russia.
Yeah, there's
Patriot.
there's a technical issue.
Yeah. Oh, technical issue. The technical.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah. Okay, so you guys probably took an unnecessary risk to bring me on the show, but hopefully it's not gonna turn negative. But
No.
I get his point about, trying to buy local, try to support American, right? Try to do what you can to support your local communities. Those are all valid points. But the way in which he's doing this is basically painting everybody as unpatriotic and casting aspersion in order to sort of justify the kind of antagonistic approach he's taken, right? If we have quote unquote patriots like Pete that come out and they want to attack the government the way he's doing it, that's going to end very badly, very quickly. There are constitutional methods and motivations that are prescriptions to getting things taken care of in this country. And it doesn't require somebody saying that anybody who doesn't live, all 330 plus million of us who don't live in Washington, D.C., are somehow automatically unpatriotic by geography is the most specious and ridiculous argument that I could ever have imagined.
Well, not only that, it patriotizes, it devalues the rest of America. I mean, there's nothing wrong with Iowa. Thank you so much. Iowa is still part of this country. So is Kentucky. So is Tennessee and California. And we need to respect that. So Washington, D.C. is not, frankly, the idea that Washington, D.C. is the only place in the country is fairly patronizing. It's fairly paternalistic, and it's something that I would really expect from the upper echelons of our government and not from a grassroots movement, where we need to realize that one place is not the only place in this country that people are important and that rules should be made. So there's that one thing. The second thing is he's clearly devoted to his cause, and that's a beautiful thing. And I think that the furthering of his cause would probably be facilitated by taking a kinder approach to it, because you will engender trust, and you will be able to reach people who are reasonable if you approach it reasonably. Use ration, use logic, use evidence. Conservatives tend to like facts. We tend to be unimpressed with overly emotional appeal, an emotional appeal that's based on aggression rather than that's based on logic and fact. And so I would suggest to Patriot Pete, while he is, clearly very devoted, I would much welcome a return even of this gentleman. But if we can try to have a kinder approach. Hi, more perfect union. There you go. Look at that. If we could have a much kinder, more conversational approach, because this show is really about conversation, not so much about shutting other people down. It's about opening people up. That's all.
And there's nothing wrong with it. Like I said, I think anybody who wants to bring something forward to the table that is going to promote conversation forward, I think that the ideas themselves have to be heard. And I'll give him credit for his statement about Buy American. Try to be closer to the seat of power. But for most of us, that seat of power is our local government, our city, county governments, our school boards, and then our representatives and our senators, state representatives, state senators, federal congressmen and senators, right? Though that's how we do that. And we turn up the heat, rhetorically speaking, to make them aware of the things that we need from them. They represent us. Therefore, our need should be their directives.
Exactly.
So to the extent that we can promote U.S. commerce by buying and making manufacturing things locally, supporting our local businesses, he's 100% right. I'm not gonna badmouth the idea, but the way he characterizes those who don't meet his particular narrative as being somehow less than, that's, to me, is just as bad as somebody who says that unless I walk that mile in their shoes exactly the same way they do with the same footprint, I can't be aware of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I don't need to be a black person to recognize that what happened to George Floyd was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That it was an abuse of police power, police authority. But I also can be objective and say that the statements that were made by the family attorney and by others, Sharpton and a number of others, that guaranteed that this was somehow racist or racially motivated is crazy. Oh, she say Santa Claus? So,
the cutest co-host that we have.
Mm-hmm, by far.
She's way better looking. She's
I'm gonna bring her upstairs so you guys continue the conversation. I'll be back here shortly.
Yeah.
Okay.
The method and manner in which the words are used is as vital as the underlying thought that you're trying to purvey. Right.
Agreed.
So, so I give the artist formerly known as Patriot Pete credit for the intent,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not sure that his motivation was about trying to build. I think, honestly, the antagonism reminded me so much of the stuff that I see out of somebody like Antifa.
Yes, yes, it was very leftist.
So if it's not, Pete, if you're still out there, I know you probably don't care because you think I'm a Russian plant. Okay. But the practical reality is that if you have a pro-America, pro-constitutional message, then you should consider changing your rhetoric or the style of your rhetoric.
Because it could be your message. It seems inherently pro-America. It seems quite pro-America, and your message could be so much more effective and so much more relatable if your message wasn't laced with so much and delivered with so much vitriol. It would be, I think, much better received. Yeah.
And Nurse Bear has a comment in chat, says they flipped their school board to a conservative majority.
Mm-hmm.
In a loose sense, I think that whether it's conservative or it's progressive is an indicator, right, of what you might get for the educational outcomes for that school district. But I think just simply flipping to a majority of one kind of party or one political ideology isn't sufficient. Donald Trump was right about one thing, right? We are in a constant battle for what the founders had intended the nation to be.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I call myself the more perfect union is that you can never rest on whatever your laurels are. So if your school board is flipped in a direction that aligns with what you think it should be doing, that's great. But guess what? Your work isn't done. You need to be a part of the school board. You need to be in the PTA or whatever the hell passes for the PTA these days. Okay. You need to make sure that you're aware of what lesson plans look like. I think one of the best things that might have actually came out, and hopefully it'll survive the pandemic, is the fact that lesson plans are by and large, or in a lot of places, they're available to parents to look at. Now, aside from what I think it was, I can't remember exactly where it was, but in the Midwest, right? They were putting one version of the lesson plan in the student section. I think the program's called Canvas. It's a software as a service thing. And then the teachers and the administrators had a different view. And the administration was telling teachers, just don't put this piece of it in the place where the student and where the parents can see what the student is doing. Just teach the student and hide it from the parents. And that's the kind of thing that should get that administrator fired. And the only way it will happen is that some parent or some group of parents sees that it occurs and they reach out and they do something about it. So great that you get the political ideology that you want for your students. Hopefully it's the kind of thing that works, but ultimately keep doing the homework, because it's not going to stop. And the moment you take your eyes off that prize, which is to educate your kids so that they can take the reins of authority and leadership in a generation, the left is going to inexorably store. Part of their thing is progress. They're taking the Chinese view, right? They're doing it multi-generationally. It all basically got started heavy with Woodrow Wilson at the turn of the last, well, not the turn, but early in the last century. And it's an inexorable push towards government control. And the founders believed that, most of the founders believed that the federal government was to be the thing that held the states together, not the nails that put them in the coffin. And someday, if you guys want to talk about the 16th and 17th Amendment and their relationship to what's going wrong with the country today, we could do something.
You know what? I would actually like to pick up the phone and call you one of these days, and I'm sure we can make those arrangements, because I think you would be a good one to continue to have back on the program. Because
Sure.
quite honestly, for me, I'm 30 years old. I only have a limited amount of experience, or yeah, let's just put an experience. I think you have a few more years of experience on me.
I'm 31. I've been married twice. No, just kidding. No, I served in the Navy under Reagan, so yeah, I'm up there.
Well,
I usually get dismissed as a boomer, but people don't realize I was on a ballistic missile submarine, so that's in fact what we were called.
yeah.
But I was called
So-
that at 21 years old, so really the shock of it is just worn off by now.
So ballistic missile sub was at I guess
Ohio class.
Ohio. Okay. So yeah, I was Navy as well. Naval intelligence.
Skimmer puke.
I never got to go sailing on any of the boats, but
Well, there you go.
for me, I took airplanes to and from Cuba multiple times.
Oh, you Gitmo guy?
Camp 7.
Okay.
So yeah, I got to play in the garden there.
Nice.
So yeah, I know a little bit about it, but that was under Obama,
I'm sorry.
right? But no, so I mean, when we're talking about moving forward, and I missed a little bit of it because I was upstairs with my daughter taking care of her, but you were talking about the Board of Education and all that, and from a local standpoint, from those that are, because quite honestly, the demographic that we've had stretching from YouTube over to Twitch has been anywhere from about 45 to 75 years of age. And there's been a lot of people who have asked, well, how can I get involved on a local level to try to help change?
Walk over to the place where the meeting is. If it's online, sign up. I don't have kids anymore. Well, I still have kids, right? But they're like 32, so I'm a grandfather. Not that that necessarily means anything, never. But my children aren't in school, right? But if you rent or own a house, part of your rent or your house payment goes to taxes, which fund the schools. You all have a vested interest in what goes on. And nobody in today's environment with smartphones, Xbox 360, social media, Twitter, Twitch, whatever, all of these organizations have a public facing vector for everybody to become involved with. So if you think you don't know how to get in touch with your local school board, that's on you. You're not asking yourself the right question. Especially if you have any social media presence whatsoever. Facebook. Virtually every school in America has a Facebook page. Every city has a web page. The town of Potter, Nebraska has a web page. There are 1,200 people in Potter, Nebraska. Okay. So, you live in Iowa, right? It's depending on where you're at. If you're not in Des Moines or Ames or I can't remember. There's another city that is pretty big. So you would know. You live there. But anyway, if you're outside of those three or four major cities in Iowa, you might have somebody who's your next door neighbor might be 120 acres, couple miles, 5 miles. Like, you know, there's a reason, like if you go through the middle of the country, there were towns like roughly every 10 miles apart, because that used to be how far you could take your grain to market. So you would see these little towns sprout up around the grain elevators, right? So
It is here in South Dakota.
oh, yeah. So, oh, sorry, I said Iowa, but yeah, you're South Dakota. I apologize, but it's the same thing, right? So
Well, same concept, yeah.
you're sparsely populated out. Now Patriot Pete lives in DC, where there's just a crap ton of people.
Let's put a disclaimer out there. So
Patriot Pete are-
here's the he does not live in Washington D.C. as he claimed. He lives in Homestead, Florida.
You mean he misrepresented himself?
Something like that.
Did he work for the Biden administration?
But I just wanted to throw that out there because I don't. Quite honestly, I'm not a fan when I bring somebody on and I have a good intentions. They're telling me they have information on the same, and then just go into attack mode. I just don't have a whole lot of patience for that. But coming on and having a civil discourse or a civil conversation, that's a different story.
Yeah, my thought process is this: discussion is better than denigration.
I think he was looking for a fight. Honestly, I think it was a trigger. I mean, I think he was trying to elicit a fight, and he was probably frustrated that he didn't get to. And that's got to be hard for him. Poor guy.
There are plenty of other leftist channels he can get onto and find somebody that probably aligns.
I'm sure.
But I mean, for myself, we started this out. What was it?
I kicked. It wasn't an earthquake. I accidentally kicked my table.
What was it? Like the end of January, beginning of February, we started this, and of course, we've seen a lot of movement over the last couple months. Of course, we did the Health Freedom Conference, and that really kind of opened up the doors. But have you looked at the fullstream.net?
You talking to me?
Yeah.
No.
So we actually built a YouTube and a Facebook alternative
Really?
right at the bottom of the screen.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, let's just see. Hold on. What is it? It's fullstream.net?
Yep,
Mhm.
.net.
1 second. 'Cause I'm obviously not. I'm typing it, but it looks like it's a bad IP.
Yeah, you're typing full stream with a EA. It's EE.
Oh, well, sure. Maybe if I just read once in a while.
But I mean, it's literally looks and feels just like Facebook. So we're kind of building it out. We're not. I mean, it's slowly but surely building. But when we're giving data to these big tech companies, guess what, guys? You become the product. That's how it's free.
That's not free. If it's not free if they're taking your content, your metadata, and they're marketing it to individuals, businesses, or whatever, and they're making all the profit. You're getting a questionable value, particularly if you can't express yourself in a free way. If you, not that I'm not an anti-vaxxer, but if you have questions about the vaccine policy or masking policy, attempt to do something that if you did it at a city council meeting, you would be allowed to. But on a social media platform, if they're restricting your ability to freely express yourself, it's still taking your metadata and they're marketing that. Oh, and by the way, if you get banned from Twitter or Facebook, they still sell your data advertisers who will target you via email and other mechanisms.
Oh yeah. And so I told her,
Let's step away for just 1 second.
This is a fun broadcast. Aren't you glad you showed up, everybody? I mean, look at that. This is one of those, to bring back an old phrase that we haven't used in a little while. This is one of those, we needed popcorn for a couple bits of this podcast. I'm glad everybody's here today. Y'all seem to have some active chat going on that I apologize I haven't been able to pay a whole lot of attention to. I've been trying, but I've noticed that when I do pay attention to the chat stream, I am missing some of the points that are that More Perfect Union is making, and I really do. I find his discourse very interesting, and I want to pay attention and really fully absorb it. So, if we're not really addressing your comments today, I apologize. But y'all seem to be keeping yourselves entertained over there, so that's good. I know, squirrely, right? But this is a good show today. It's a really good show today.
Yeah.
Nanashi, UK, you seem to have some differing opinions from us, and that's great. I haven't been able to look at them really closely, but you and Patriot Lady, I think you're either developing a love relationship or a hate relationship, and I can't figure it out yet. So that's great.
I do have a John DN. There is a moderator in there on the Twitch side. We're very, very familiar with it. And if you see Time for Truth, that's Jason. He's one of the more regular guests on the shows when we actually do an evening show. But yeah, he does pop in there and come through quite often. So, but
He's here. He's here.
Okay. Easily entertained. Well, so am I.
Yeah. Let's see.
I think
I want to look at some Nanashi stuff.
But yeah, going back to see the thing when we set up the social media platform, I told myself first of all, the only thing that we want to do is we want to keep it clean as much as possible. I mean, for like pornography and keeping all that stuff off of there.
No. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm just so what we did was I was like, okay, I want to have the ability to express what I think, express what I feel, and not have somebody sitting there, oh, this person likes Biden. Click, delete, or block, or whatever. Oh, looks like you have your little baby there with you now.
Yeah, so you have a 2-year-old. I have a 1-year-old.
Yeah, but your 1-year-old is a little bit bigger than my 2-year-old.
Yeah, he goes a good 72 pounds right now. So he's probably about 90.
But yeah, we so that's based on when we set up the server. Basically, the guy that helped write the software says use only for good, never for evil.
Yeah, it's like the argument, right? Nothing in and of itself is inherently good or evil. Simply the manner of its usage makes it so.
But that's just what he said. So we try to keep it clean because yes, there are going to be kids. In fact, there are currently kids that are actually starting to create accounts there. And so we try to keep it as clean as possible. But I'm not going to restrict somebody just because they're putting out a lengthy post or they put a video up is basically calling out different things. I'm not going to do that.
I think the generic. I have no stake in your game, right? But I think generally, if you limit people to posting non quote unquote illegal content, not advocating violence, not advocating harm to others, or gathering for illicit purpose, then I think the idea should be that people should be free to express themselves. And if their community builds up with people that are like-minded, I'm not suggesting that if you see that white supremacists are doing something, then yeah, you kind of have a social responsibility to prevent that from spreading. But I think if people come on and they behave themselves and they're reasonable people and they want to have a dialogue or conversation to move the needle, to persuade, to engage, then cutting them off because you disagree with their thought is pretty un-American.
Yeah, and I mean, guys, there is a certain level of responsibility as an owner of a platform like that. There is a certain level of responsibility to the laws that we have to abide by. I mean, anything. If people were to actually go through and look at like the privacy policy, the terms of use, all that, anything that falls under the federal law in regards to like terroristic threats and different things like that, we have to restrict that. And we are morally and legally obligated to report it if it becomes a continued thing. That is a law. But threats against the president, stuff like that, when you have stuff like that happen legally, in order to basically keep the Section 230 status, we have to make those disclaimers that we can restrict those rights due to the federal legal issues. So
yeah, I'll try not to be the person ever that gets you guys banned.
And we're in the process of publishing apps. I'm moving forward. We're apps, web apps, the whole 9 yards. We're doing everything we can.
They say necessity is the mother of invention, right? So the fact that social media companies, regardless of their size, have decided to engage in this kind of a model that essentially favors the woke cancel culture. Somebody out there, Parler, tried to do it, right? And they're trying to make their shtick a little bit. Rumble, there's a bunch of smaller sites out there that are trying to fill that niche, right? And as these entities, including yourselves, if you can compete in that marketplace of ideas, you'll be successful, and people will flock to you. So keep your mission clear and your goals. You know, it's like when you're sailing, find a place on the horizon, that a known point on the horizon, stick to it. You might have to tack back and forth a little bit, right? You might have to circle back around if the storm's coming in, but just remember where that point on the horizon is and keep steering towards it.
Yeah.
I did want to. There's Nanashi. You had made a point or had a question a little while ago about American healthcare, and you had said, basically expressed some frustration that we seem to be antagonistic toward centralized healthcare, the UK healthcare here, and we are supporting our current American system of healthcare. And I think you may have misunderstood. We're not overtly fond of either system. We do feel that both systems are innately broken. So don't. While we may not show support for your British healthcare system, please don't make the mistake of feeling that we feel that our healthcare system is perfect or even is edging on the positive side. You know, good. We feel that our healthcare system is in desperate need of some alteration. We just
And just so you guys are aware, she works in the healthcare system.
Mhm.
So she is very, very knowledgeable about that side.
Yeah, I mean, I look at the way that the healthcare system operates, and I can use the ACA and the way the ACA was passed and what it actually did. The ACA gave a certain small number, relatively small number, of Americans access to affordable health care. And the only way that it was affordable was because it was free, right? The expansion of Medicaid was the only thing that was good that came out of that for those who could not afford. If you were one of the many, many millions of people who had to pay premiums, you likely found that your options were limited to one or two and decreasing over from 2013 to 2017. The number of alternatives that you had to choose from went smaller and smaller and smaller. And the amount of money that you had to pay went higher and higher and higher. And here was the problem with the ACA. And then I'll tell you why I disagree with the fact that the federal government stepped into this. The ACA was designed to take a bunch of money in from people who were healthy, just like all insurance, and pay for services for people who became sick. But they added the financial component. Yeah, the other financial component to it was that they were going to tax people who choose not to pay for insurance, which a lot of young people who don't have health insurance from their employer don't care because they're generally healthy. They don't have significant negative health outcomes. Now, that's not to say that there aren't people who have what would have been considered pre-existing conditions or have chronic conditions that need maintenance like diabetes and so forth, right? Just set that group of people aside for a minute. If you were young and you were in good health and you did not have health insurance provided for by a job, you didn't care. That was money in your pocket.
Mhm.
But when the health insurance law came forward and said, well, we need all these people who are not going to take anything out of the system to pay into it so we can effectively pay the outflows, right? And in essence, like Social Security, the ACA was technically a Ponzi scheme because it was making people pay in. Now, if you happen to not have health insurance or you were self-employed, you were making a social media website and you have to pay for your own insurance, okay, you paid in. And if you were single, you had to pay in for a bronze plan. There's bronze, silver, and platinum or gold or whatever the hell the plans were. And the only difference between all of the plans was how much money you paid and what your deductibles were. It was the same thing, right? Because all the essential services were the same for all the plans. It was just a question of how much money got paid or how much they paid of your money, right? So on the CRAP plan, I had employer sponsored insurance by the time I first came around. And so I just checked. So I was living in California at the time in a high population, high net worth area. I wasn't high net worth, still am not, for anybody's benefit. My minimum for me and my wife, no kids at home, our minimum was $16,000 a year. And then I think it was $8,000 a piece in health expenses before there's no copays. So we would have to pay a crap ton of money out of pocket before we got the 80%. Right? So that represented for us roughly 36% of our pre-tax income for nothing.
Mhm.
So if you wonder why people were pissed off about the ACA, is that it was just a wealth transfer plan, and it was intended always to be a wealth transfer plan to take money away from some people and use it to pay the health care for people who typically were in the system already anyway.
Mhm.
So in a way, it was basically the government shifting the tax burden off of itself and putting it further on the backs of American citizens.
And see, when people ask me, okay, I'm a millennial, and everybody here pretty much knows that I'm a millennial, but everybody asks me basically, why do you hate Obamacare? It's not that I hated Obamacare, because I understood that there was a necessity for certain things. What I hated about it was that individual mandate. Because quite honestly, the first, after moving out of my parents' house at the age of 16, I didn't have insurance except for through the hospital, through the military, so on and so forth. But guess, I look at it and I work my tail end off for the money that I have, and they wanted to charge me $750 every, and that was every 2 weeks. So I was paying $1,400 minimum, $1,400 every single month,
It's like
just to have insurance that I
change.
never use.
Yeah. That's more than half your income at that age and in that income bracket.
That was my entire income at that
Oh,
age.
okay. There you go.
So here's the other problem with the ACA. And a mind-numbingly stupid decision by Chief Justice Roberts really cements this. The federal government argued that under the Commerce Clause, the ACA was legit because if enough people, and this had never been argued ever before in the history of the country, that enough people failing to participate in a market had a deleterious effect on that market's survivability. That is to say that if enough people didn't buy insurance, insurance would be more expensive for those who did. Guess what? That's what the founders intended. If there was a market that everybody wanted to be in, everybody would be in it.
And it would flourish.
And there would be competition, and there would be price competition. There would be an increase of services. It would be better. The problem with healthcare is that most people don't give a crap about it until they need it. So it's not like, oh, my lights are out, I'll go buy a light bulb. Where's the cheapest place to buy a light bulb? So people would avoid spending money on healthcare or health insurance and probably not go to a doctor unless there was something seriously wrong, like they broke a leg or, oh, I have cancer. So they wouldn't do it until the last minute. And insurance companies, those evil insurance companies who literally look at the money they take in, calculate how much money they have to send out, and figure out how to set a rate that returns for them a usual and customary profit. You can argue whether or not you think that healthcare should be a profit motive business or not. That's not this conversation. But when the government said, they called it the Affordable Care Act, and what it really did was simply pay for healthcare for poor people. So it wasn't really affordable to 80+% of the people who were in it. The concept,
If you made it over $35,000 a year, you were stuck holding the bag on a lot of costs. And I'll even take it down as far as $20,000 a year.
Yeah, one quick second. So the founders never intended the government to regulate industry the way that it was interpreted by the Supreme Court and by the Solicitor General. They said that if you didn't participate, it could adversely affect the market, and therefore compelling people to participate was the only way to make that market stable. Well, that's basically like saying you have to buy 10 light bulbs a week for the rest of your life. You don't need it. You don't need it until the light goes off or till it gets dark, and but eventually you're going to have a surplus. You're going to have a surplus of things that you can't use. Like the pandemic toilet paper, right? If you could get it, you hoarded it. But the argument that really is confounding was when the first time around the ACA case went before the Supreme Court, the government's own lawyer, Obama's Solicitor General, argued that the penalty wasn't a tax. They explicitly said it wasn't a tax. It was a fee designed to encourage people to have health insurance. After all, we just want to help themselves. But if they don't, we want to take a little bit of money from them so that we can take care of those who need it at the low end of the economic spectrum. Judge Roberts, in a 5-4 decision, sided with the liberal justices and said that, no. Yeah, sure. They argued it wasn't a tax, but really it's a tax. And the only reason he argued that it was a tax was to preserve the constitutionality of the act under the taxing power of the Congress. If it was a fee or a penalty, it wasn't a tax. And the entirety of the act would have fell on its backside. Okay. The secondary aspect of that, well, I'll save that for another time. But in essence, it wasn't the founders' intent to ever have the federal government get into so much of what it does. But because of the 16th Amendment, which allowed taxation of income, and the 17th Amendment, which took away the state's ability to appoint their own senators and made it basically Bob rule, 51% get you where you want to go, the states lost their ability to temper the rhetoric of the House because they're just as vested as being elected the next cycle by the people that voted the House of Representatives in their districts. And it's a little bit easier to get elected as a senator than it is to get elected in the House. So by doing that, they're basically trying to appease, or they're dumbing down everything they do and trading policy for votes to secure power. And this is why we have bad law like the ACA. There are better ways to affect better health outcomes than compulsory taxation for redistributive efforts. And since 1917 forward, progressives and the Democratic Party have largely been about taking money from one group and giving it to another. Now, people on the left will say, well, all Republicans do is give tax breaks to the rich. I have news for you. Giving somebody a tax break or a tax cut isn't giving them anything. It's simply allowing them to keep what they earned. And if people don't get that as a fundamental construct, if I have $10 in my pocket and I loan it out and I get $12 back, that's my money. I earned it. If the government says, give me $2 out of your $10, I have less money. Okay, and there is a reasonable thing for which the Constitution provides and actually indicates. They don't specify because they wanted the Congress to have the power to do these things, the government to do these things on its own based on changing circumstances. And that is to say, we provide for the common defense. We promote the general welfare. And the founders were incredibly intelligent people. They use terms with precision. Promote and provide are not the same. They don't mean the same. And anybody who seeks to say that one is equated to the other has no fundamental understanding of grammar or English or etymology. So to the extent that the government can compel us to do things, they can compel us to do things either through passing laws that nobody challenges and thus creating precedent, or having a Supreme Court who occasionally gets it wrong, a la Dred Scott, a la the ACA. And again, to the earlier points, The only thing that keeps that from happening is the due diligence of the population.
I want to take just a second to address something that's going on in the comments. Nanashi, I understand that you have clearly a heartfelt support for your healthcare system. I understand that. I would challenge you for a moment to
It's her
think.
country. I mean, it's fine. If that's what they want, let her. That's totally fine for her.
Yes, I would challenge you for a moment, though, to realize that in the sense that nothing is free, there is a group of people in your country who pay and pay dearly for your healthcare, and that is your healthcare workers, your physicians, especially your physicians in training. They work 100+ hours a week for very, very little pay. And I say this as a person who has family who is medical personnel in the UK, who grew up in the UK, who are both British and now American citizens. Your young doctors are grossly negligently underpaid, which is fine. That is something that they have chosen to go into. But that do not misunderstand the fact that that means that there is someone who is paying dearly for your healthcare. It's just not your healthcare consumer. It is your healthcare provider. Your healthcare provider is paid. I think when my sister added up the number of hours worked versus the amount that was received in income, it was something to the tune of $5 to $6 per hour for her, was her husband's physician's income. So bear that in mind. There is a cost associated with it. You just don't see it. So it is not free by any means. The second thing that I will put out there, and I'm going to try not to make this sound harsh, but please don't labor under the idea that America is a failed attempt to be the UK. We are not. America is actually an active attempt and was started as an active attempt to be not the UK. So we're okay with having a system that is not yours. And we appreciate your input. But please remember that our point of this country was to be not the UK.
Yeah, it is completely different. But I'm gonna cut in real quick, guys. And there is some breaking news. So there has been a declaration of a regional state of emergency in regards to the Colonial Falls pipeline. They have failed to restart that. So
y'all go fill your gas tanks.
Get it now while the lines are still short.
Yeah, as soon as word gets really out there, get out there, get your gas tanks filled up, especially if you're on the eastern seaboard, because that is going to be the biggest impact. I know we are already starting to see our gas prices here in the Midwest are starting to spike already.
The east and the south.
Anna, do we know why it was shut down? There was a ransomware attack. Somebody opened an email inside the control room, and they were able to gain access to the controls. So,
and apparently that's propane, diesel, gasoline, and
there's
all energy form, all hydrocarbon go to the East Coast
structure across the entire eastern seaboard. So, just do yourselves a favor, go get some gas and get ready to hunker down. It's a good thing it's not cold out or as cold anymore as it was in Texas, but I have a feeling with this ransomware, it will take some time to get this back online.
Mm-hmm.
So
I know what I'm doing when we log off today.
So
you should be, because you work on Wednesday, right?
I do. And I was too tired on the way home to stop for gas, so my tank is like less than half full.
Devin.
And Proud is absolutely right. Trump did say that it's going to go to $6 a gallon.
Mm-hmm. So buy it while it's 3, y'all.
So want to throw something right for parity is obviously not right of center, which is fine. I mean, ideas, sunshine, Brandeis, the whole shoot match. But he says Americans are so resistant to the concept of taxation, we'd rather shoot ourselves in the foot. Americans are not against taxation. We understand, and it's on the Treasury building. Taxes are the price for a civil society. So what we spend tax money, what we tax for, and how we spend taxes is important. And to be honest, most of the people who have no problem with taxes in this country pay little or no tax in this country. So I take exception with the characterization, but also Ripe's comment is literally rife. So I want to say this in a nice way. Lack of understanding about how taxation structures work and why we get taxed. Right? The political parties tax for different reasons. And on his side of the aisle, I'm presuming his side of the aisle, taxation is a mechanism to pay for some program that benefits a smaller segment of the population than is required to pay for that service or that program. And I have a problem with it because I have paid every penny of tax I have ever been required to pay. But I also don't have a problem with somebody who is a millionaire who invests money in a plant that creates a bunch of jobs. And when he makes his profit, his calculus for tax ought to be how many jobs did he create and what was the average tax rate of the money collected for those people. But we don't do that, right? We simply say the rich is the rich. Let me tell you what Joe Biden says: if you're a family and you make over 400,000, your taxes are going up. Anybody have any idea what the average small business income is? It doesn't take much to get to 400K. If you're a small business and you sell $1 million a year, you're not really doing that well. But they're going to tax these people who create 70% of the jobs in this country out of existence. And then, of course, the left will bitch like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez does about Amazon bringing $100,000, $25,000, $100,000 a year jobs to New York because they're not unionized. So they want it both ways. And that's how you know that the argument is false. Sorry to take away from the breaking news, but
No, that's
tell people to go get gas, they go get gas.
yeah. No, and I mean, I'm not going to sit and continue to run on with the left wing talking points.
It's fine, just to understand it for what it is.
Yeah,
It's not quite trolling. It's just I get and welcome his point of view. Right? I mean, I'm happy to do. I went on Prime K's stream the other night and literally got hit on all sides for 3 hours until 2:00 in the morning from everybody on that panel, except for one dude who said he was a progressive conservative, which I don't know how you reconcile that, but everybody else was left to extreme left of center. And so I got no problem discussing policy with anybody. But the idea there is I'd like to ask Ripe, how much skin does he have in the game? what does he pay in taxes? How much do you take from the federal government versus how much do you put in? So the founders thought that the government should do very little. The federal government should do very little. They should protect the common defense. They should promote the building of postal roads was the original intent, right? And that they should regulate commerce between the states so that Georgia couldn't put a tariff on goods that came from North Carolina. See, that's what the Constitution says. But what we've done with it is we've interpreted the Commerce Clause in such a fashion as to say that we can restrict and regulate everything down to the individual level. And unfortunately, because it's gone on for so long, it's going to take a constitutional convention or a massive upheaval in terms of who represents us in the federal government in a large number of states. Convention of the States requires 34 states to sign off on it, to kick it off, 38 states to approve or ratify whatever the changes are. Constitutional amendment is 2/3 of both houses, signed by the president, and then it goes to the states where 38 states have to approve it, right? There's no way that the Congress, who gets their power through transferring money from one group of people to another group of people in exchange for their vote, is ever going to pass a constitutional amendment that would say give term limits, right? Or restrict the federal government's ability to involve itself in your daily life, down to the point of healthcare. Now we're being forced, a la the Weimar Republic. Oh, sorry for that reference. But now you're not going to be able to do anything in the country without a vaccine card. Show me your papers.
Well, it was kind of funny. So I had a troll come on a couple weeks back that was calling me a neo-Nazi and a white supremacist.
I get that all the time. But
Oh, it's kind of funny
not the neo.
because the response that I gave him was, do you know your grandparents? Do you still know and have you memorized the number that was tattooed on their arm? I have. And they don't understand when they're calling you a neo-Nazi or a fascist, or that we completely disagree with all of that stuff. And I mean, we are strictly, when people start trolling and they're starting to talk about that kind of stuff, it bothers the crap out of me.
Yeah, I mean, people, I think the whole Nazi argument thing has been bandied around too much, and I realize I made a Weimar Republic reference a second ago, right? But the practical truth is, if you don't like the idea of having a conservative value, then you shouldn't support an overtly fascist idea that says that I only have value to the federal government to the extent that I can pay for somebody else's existence, right? That's a financial matrix argument. And I took the red pill. Okay. I'm awake. I'm not woke. I'm awake. I understand. I can critically analyze something that is being said or presented in front of me and figure out for myself whether or not that meets what the founders had intended. And when it doesn't, in my mind, meet that standard, then I'm going to push back against it. It doesn't mean that I think that the underlying thought, like Patriot Pete's argument, right, Buy American, isn't a good argument. It's a good argument. And it may be that improving our healthcare system is a good argument. The question is why and how, or not why. The question is how it gets done. Under the enumerated powers clause, everything that is not explicitly afforded to the federal government is reserved for the states. States can tax all day long and provide free health care if that's what they want to do. If that's what they want to do, if the citizens of New York want people to have free health care, the citizens of New York can give themselves free health care. Massachusetts did it. The governor of Massachusetts, or the former governor of Massachusetts, Mitt Romney, also said that it was not a good model for the rest of the country. It worked in Massachusetts because its population and demographics were such that it could be done. And even after the fact, 15 years later, it's a failure. Well, just before Obamacare took over, right? It was failing. So it sounds good on paper to have nice, noble causes like everybody should have access to high quality health care until you don't have enough doctors. You don't have enough nurses. Look what happened with the pandemic and the number of cases that flooded in and the hours that people had to go through. And to Nanashi's point, right? Underfunded. People are making decisions about who to treat and how you can be treated. I don't want to go so far as to call it a death panel, but there are certain practical limits to what you can get done if you have finite resources. And those resources are either the dollars to pay for it, the dollars to buy the equipment, the dollars to pay the medical staff, the dollars to keep up the infrastructure, or simply the physical number of first responders and medical personnel that are necessary to maintain adequate. And adequate is subjective, right? Adequate coverage for the population. Nobody thought we didn't have enough doctors in this country until the pandemic basically put everything to the test. And governments, the federal government under Barack Obama depleted our stores of ventilators and PPE after the H1N1 virus in 2008-9. Okay. The bird flu. And they never replenished it. New York had a requirement to spend, or they knew that they were $600 million short of medical equipment, and they didn't take care of it. Why? Because they thought they would just come to the federal government. And the federal government responded because it was a time of intense pressure. The government sent up all the ventilators that could have. Nobody in this country died because they couldn't get a ventilator, despite what you found in the news media. We sent hospital ships to the East and West Coast. They also redid Javits Center as a makeshift hospital.
And that and never took one person.
One person. They didn't treat many, if any, right? They were largely unused.
Zero.
Okay. Yeah. No, didn't treat one person. Sure. Yeah. I knew it was very low to none. Yet Andrew Cuomo put a rule out, an executive order that sent sick old people. I'm not quite old yet, so I'm older. I'm not old. Sent old people back into nursing homes where it spread like wildfire. It's like if I had a dry tinder yard and I threw a firecracker out there and just said, well, I'm just going to go have coffee, and my house burns down in the field and all my neighbors are killed because of it, I would be responsible for that. Yet Andrew Cuomo not only did he not take responsibility for it, it looks like he's probably going to keep on doing what he's doing. Unless some magic happens. I don't know if Letitia James, who's the AG for the state of New York, is interested in running for governor, and that's her ploy. But Andrew Cuomo killed an awful lot of people through that policy.
And so did Gavin Newsom, if you want to get real technical.
Newsom, Gretchen Whitmer, she's under fire for hers right now. Pritzker did the same thing. If you look at it, right, and then there was something, I think it was on Twitter. Somebody railed against DeSantis and said he had 10,000 COVID deaths in nursing homes. But in the same breath, they don't mention any blue state, right? So that's how you know that COVID was politicized. So there's no policy that you can tie to Ron DeSantis that exacerbated that issue. Everybody gets more or less a pass in the early days of the pandemic, but once they understood, once that the guidance was clear that if you were 70 years or older, and I'll defer to Samantha, to Sam here, because she's in the health field. But once you understood who the most at-risk people were, if you didn't do stuff to protect that at-risk population, then you're to blame.
Yes. That is the point of public health. We have public health agencies for a reason, and those public health agencies are there to identify at-risk sections of the population and to promote their welfare. That is why they're around. They're around to make it so that the politicians, the rest of the country, even general practitioners do not have to devote time to identifying and then coming up with a recommended treatment for high risk sections of the population. That is what they're for. So they are there to recommend a treatment. If they do not do that, they are being negligent, completely negligent. If the politician or the leader does not follow that treatment, I don't know that they could be called negligent in the sense of they are not medical personnel, therefore they are not subject to our same laws and rules and regulations. But certainly on the human being standpoint, they are being negligent as a human and as a leader. So there's that. Did that answer your question properly? Did I misunderstand the question?
I wasn't asking a question. I was literally saying it there because you're a health person that you might have a different perspective or rationale. It sounds like we're on the same page.
I think so.
But yeah, Tom Wolf in Pennsylvania. Yeah. Don't mention him. He also sent elderly to die. Yeah, but every 4 years, Republicans are basically characterized as we don't like grandma and grandpa. We don't like our friends and our family. We're sending them off to die.
Yeah, remember the campaign ad where they had somebody stand there looking like Paul Ryan pushing an old lady in a wheelchair over a cliff? Remember that? That was part of the 2012 election.
Yeah, that was a few years ago.
Sorry, you guys were all kids then, but
I think Sam was old enough to vote. I was not. No, I was in 2012. I was, but 2008 I was not.
2012, I had been practicing nursing for like 6 years. I was definitely old enough to.
Yeah, I think Tanashi is getting hung up, right? Nobody's questioning the NHS. If the NHS were here in the United States, I'd be questioning it all day long. But it's your system. It's okay for you. It's okay if you and your people and your government have said that's the way it is and you accept it. That's fine. That's the essence of self-government. So I don't know why you keep coming around the corner and saying because we're not like you, we're somehow deficient.
Yes.
Which is the implication. I'm not saying you're exactly saying that, right? So don't take it the wrong way. But the bottom line is I don't care about the health system in England if it works for the people of England. If you don't think you're funded well enough, then get people thrown out of the House of Commons. Because I don't know exactly how your parliamentary system works, but I believe people are elected to the House of Commons, and the House of Lords is whatever nightmare that Lord of the Flies thing that it is, right? But you have two houses, and they have to work together. And then they create their law. And if everybody in England wanted nationalized health care, fine. But you have to deal with it. And if you're underfunded, then you have to pay more taxes. And I suspect that taxation in England may be similar to this country, where some people pay most of the bill. The top, I don't want to say this, but a very small percentage of, because I don't know the number exactly. I don't know what the break is, so I'll look it up. But a very small number of people as a percentage of total population in this country pay an exceedingly disparately large amount of taxes that fund the government.
And if you're in the
It's okay to tax the rich. I'm sorry, Shane. I'll finish it up in a sentence or two. I suspect that if the number of people who actually had to pay taxes in the United States were higher, the number of people that would argue for tax increases would be disproportionately smaller. I'm sorry, Shane. Go ahead.
So, Nanashi, UK, if you're really in the deal-making business, here's what I propose. We'll take Boris Johnson. You can have Joe Biden. You can have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. You can have Nancy Pelosi. And I'll take him, and you can have all of our the really severely left with.
Out of my own pocket, I would give him the plane fare.
Oh shoot! I could. I'd
go
gladly pay that $150,000 to get all those people on a 747 and send them straight over to England.
I like it. I like
with a no return policy.
I like the no take backsies.
Yep.
Yeah. Is that you? I was going to offer it, but since you did,
yeah. And Nanashi, my point is that yes, you pay your 30 pounds a month, and that's great. But you need to realize that you pay your 30 pounds a month, plus some junior doctor works 100 hours a week, 51 weeks a year for 8 to 10 years to be able to support. And by the way, earns what is the spending equivalent of about $45,000 a year for all of people in the U.S. Just so you know, for that privilege of working 100 hours a week. Every week.
There's another thing that goes in there as well.
Or 30 pounds a month cost for healthcare.
Yeah, there's another thing that gets stacked onto this that most people on the left don't understand, right? The question of tort reform and how it applies to malpractice and what doctors have to pay. My wife's father was a retired surgeon. He did plastic surgery, but he wasn't in it for the money per se. He did a lot of reconstructive efforts for women with mastectomies and stuff like that, right? He wasn't doing a lot of elective surgery. He did some, but he was primarily in the helping burn victims and reconstructive surgery for accidents and things of that nature, right? But he paid. I think he told me once that the last 10 years of his practice, he was paying like $250,000 a year in insurance to fight frivolous lawsuits. He did that over a career. He got sued twice, and both times it was dismissed, or that he was found not liable. He had a lifetime. He was 60 years a plastic surgeon. So even at an inflation-adjusted rate, right, which is not really purely fair for this because malpractice insurance has skyrocketed in the last 15, 20 years, right? But assuming that $250,000 a year, inflation adjusted back 20 years, that's a lot of money that comes out of the economy that he could have used to hire more doctors, hire more staff, expand his business to help more people. But it didn't happen. So on the one hand, right, we say that we want to make sure that healthcare is affordable, but we're not willing on the left to challenge tort reform. Torsion, just like twisting, right? I guess in essence it kind of works, right? Because it's just like squeezing blood out of a turnip.
My wife is telling me I need to start wrapping it up. We've been going for almost 2 hours. More Perfect Union. It's been great, and I mean, I would love to have you back. I'd like to actually have a conversation with you face to face. I'm going to send you my cell phone number.
Yeah, that's fine. Just email it to me, and then
yeah. But
I'm exceedingly grateful to you guys for allowing me to come in and use my rather loud voice.
We'll definitely have you back. That is not going to be a problem.
I've enjoyed it. And again, I get on various streams, Republican Nation I've been on. There's another one. They haven't got their Twitch stream up, but there's one that's going to be coming around called the Public Square. They're trying to get their Twitch thing set up. But go on their Discord every once in a while. I recommend you guys setting up a Discord, at least temporarily, while you get the rest of your hooked up. It's a great way for people to come in, and you can do the kind of protections that you're doing here. But I'm around different places, so if you see me around on Twitch or whatever, that's fine. Eventually, the More Perfect Union, which is a Twitch stream, we'll have a regular broadcast schedule and stuff like that. What I'm trying to do is work with other entities such as yourselves and other people to create kind of like a network opportunity where we have like time slots and shows and people are doing things, and we can sort of different things out there. So if you guys are interested, let's all just kind of keep working together.
Actually, that is what I do. That is what I'm doing. I'm actually working to put a full studio together, along with actually Roku channel, having the Roku channel, and actually doing an actual TV.
Oh, right on.
So that is something that I haven't really sat down and had too much discussion with other people, because we've been growing this thing.
Yeah,
now we're building this.
Focus is obviously the Constitution, and particularly working in the education space to make improvements there to increase the quality of analytical thinking for these kids that come out of school, so that we don't have to keep fighting.
And that's kind of where we're at. Is I've been focusing my time into building the social platform, the YouTube platform, but now it's like, okay, now let's start doing what we originally anticipated, or what we were originally going to start with at the very beginning. Now we're building the infrastructure, and now we have the infrastructure. So let's start where we're going to start at first.
Well, just to say, I'm grateful for the opportunity to work with you guys, and be happy to come back another time.
Yep. And as always, guys, you have a pen and a microphone, use them. The silent majority can no longer stay silent. God bless you guys. God bless the United States of America. And we will see you guys tomorrow morning at 10 a.m.
Bye, everybody.